Stubby Pringle's Christmas. High on the mountainside by the little line cabin in the crisp, clean dusk of evening, Stubby Pringle swings into saddle. He has shape of bear in the dimness, bundled thick against cold. Double socks crowd scarred boots. Leather chaps with hair out cover patched corduroy pants. Fleece-lined jacket with wear of winters on it, bulges body and heavy gloves blunt fingers. Two gay red bandanas folded together fatten throat under chin. Battered hat is pulled down to sit on ears, and inside pocket of jacket are rabbit skin earmuffs he can put to use if he needs them. Stubby Pringle swings up into saddle. He looks out and down over worlds of snow and ice and tree and rock. He spreads arms wide and they embrace whole ranges of hills. He stretches tall and hat brushes stars in sky. He is Stubby Pringle, cowhand of the XXX, and this is his night to howl. He is Stubby Pringle, son of the wild jackass, and he is heading for the Christmas dance at the schoolhouse in the valley. Stubby Pringle swings up and his horse stands like rock. This is the pride of his string. Flop-eared, ewe-necked, cat-hipped strawberry roan, and it looks like it should have died weeks ago, but has iron rods for bones and nitroglycerin for blood, and can go from here to doomsday with nothing more than mouthfuls of snow for water and tufts of winter-cured bunch grass snatched between drifts for food. It stands like rock. It knows the folly of trying to unseat Stubby. It wastes no energy in futile explosions. It knows that 27 miles of hard winter going are foreordained for this evening, and 27 more of harder uphill return by morning. It has done this before. It is saving the dynamite under its hide for the destiny of a true cow pony, which is to take its rider where he wants to go and bring him back again. Stubby Pringle sits his saddle and he grins into cold and distance and future full of festivity. Join me in a look at what can be seen of him, despite the bundling and frosty breath vapor that soon will hang icicles on his nose. Those are careless, haphazard, scrambled features under the low hat brim, about as handsome as a blue boar's snout. Not much fuzz yet on his chin. Why, shucks, is he just a boy? Ha! Don't make that mistake, though his 20th birthday is still 6 weeks away. Don't make the mistake Hutch Handley made last summer when he thought this was young, unseasoned stuff and took to ragging Stubby and wound up with ears pinned back and upper lip split and nose mashed flat and the whole of him dumped in a rain barrel. Stubby has been taking care of himself since he was orphaned at 13. Stubby has been doing man's work since he was 15. Do you think Hard Rock Harper of the XXX would have anything but an all-around, hard-proved hand up here at his farthest winter line camp, siding old Jake Hanlon, toughest-bitten old cowman ever to ride range? Stubby Pringle slips gloved hand under rump to wipe frost off the saddle. No sense letting it melt into patches of corduroy pants. He slaps right side saddlebag. It contains a burlap bag wrapped around a 2-pound box of candy, of fancy chocolates with variegated interiors he acquired 2 months ago and has kept hidden from old Jake. He slaps left side saddlebag. It holds a burlap bag wrapped around a paper parcel that contains a close-folded piece of dress goods and a roll of pink ribbon. Interesting items, yes. They are ammunition for the campaign he has in mind to soften the affections of whichever female of the right vintage among those at the schoolhouse appeals to him most and seems most susceptible. Stubby Pringle settles himself firmly into saddle. He is just another of far scattered, poorly paid, patch-clothes cowhands that inhabit these parts, and likely marks and smells of his calling have not all been scrubbed away. He knows that. But this is his night to howl. He is Stubby Pringle, true begotten son of the wild jackass, and he has been riding line through hell and high water and winter storms for 2 months without a break, and he has done his share of the work and more than his share because old Jake is getting along and slowing some, and this is his night to stomp floorboards till schoolhouse shakes and kick heels up to lanterns above and whirl a will on female till she is dizzy enough to see past patched clothes to the man inside them. He wriggles toes deep into stirrups and settles himself firmly in the saddle. "I could eat them chocolates," says old Jake from the cabin doorway. "They wasn't hid good," he says, "not good at all." "And be beat like a drum," says Stubby, "and wrung out like a dirty dish rag." "By who?" says old Jake. "By a young'un like you? Why, I'd have tied you in knots afore you knew what's what if you'd have tried it. You're a dang-blatted young fool," he says, "a ding-busted, dang-blatted fool, riding out on a night like this if it is Christmas Eve. A dong-bongin' ding-busted, dang-blatted fool," he says. "But if I was your age, I reckon I'd be going too." He cackles like an old rooster. "Squeeze one of them for me," he says, and he steps back inside and he closes the door. Stubby Pringle is alone out there in the darkening dusk. Alone with flop-eared, ewe-necked, cat-hipped roan that can go to the last trumpet call under him, and with cold of wicked winter wind around him, and with 27 miles of snow-dumped distance ahead of him. "Woo-hoo!" he yells. "Skip to Maloo," he shouts. "Do-si-do and roundabout." He lifts reins, and the roan sighs and lifts feet. At easy warming-up amble, they drop over the edge of benchland where the cabin snugs into tall pines and on down the great bleak expanse of mountainside. Stubby Pringle, spurs a jingle, jogs upslope through crusted snow. The roan, warmed through, moves strong and steady under him. Line cabin and line work are far forgotten things. Back and up the mighty mass of mountain. He is Stubby Pringle, rootin', tootin', hard-workin', hard-playin' cowhand of the Triple X, headin' for the Christmas dance at the schoolhouse in the valley. He tops out on one of the lower ridges. He pulls rein to give the roan a breather. He brushes an icicle off his nose. He leans forward and reaches to brush several more off sidebars of old bit in the bridle. He straightens tall. Far ahead, over top of last and lowest ridge on into the valley, he can see tiny specks of glowing allure that are schoolhouse windows. Light and gaiety and good liquor and fluttering skirts are there. "Woo-hoo!" he yells. "Gals a-comin' and grandmothers," he shouts, "raise your skirts and start a-skippin', I'm a-comin'." He slaps spurs to roan. It leaps like mountain lion out and down, full into hard gallop down slope, rushing, reckless of crusted drifts and ice-coated bush branches slapping at them. He is Stubby Pringle, born with spurs on, nursed on tarantula juice, weaned on rawhide, at home in the saddle of a hurricane in shape of horse that can race to outer edge of eternity and back, heading now for hijinks 2 months overdue. He is 10 feet tall, and the horse is gigantic, with wings iron-boned and dynamite-fueled, soaring in 40-foot leaps down the flank of the whitened wonder of a winter world. They slow at the bottom. They stop. They look up the rise of the last low ridge ahead. The roan paws frozen ground and snorts twin plumes of frosty vapor. Stubby reaches around to pull down fleece-lined jacket that has worked up a bit in back. He pats right side saddlebag. He pats left side saddlebag. He lifts reins to soar up and over the last low ridge. "Hold it, Stubby. What is that? Off to the right." He listens. He has ears that can catch snitch of mouse chewing on chunk of bacon rind beyond the log wall by his bunk. He hears sound of axe striking wood. What kind of dong, bong, and ding-busted, dang-blatted fool would be chopping wood on a night like this, and if it is on Christmas Eve, and with a dance underway at the schoolhouse in the valley? What kind of chopping is this, anyway? Uneven in rhythm, feeble in stroke. Trust Stubby Pringle, who has chopped wood enough for cook stove and fireplace to fill a long freight train, to know how an axe should be handled. There, that does it. That whopping sound can only mean that the blade has hit at an angle and bounced away without biting. Some dong-bonged, ding-busted, dang-blatted fool is going to be cutting off some of his own toes. He pulls the roan around to the right. He is Stubby Pringle, born to the tune of bawling bulls and blatting calves, branded at birth, cowman raised and cowman to the marrow, and no true cowman rides on without stopping to check anything strange on range. Roan chomps on bit, annoyed at interruption. It remembers who is in saddle. It sighs and obeys. They move quietly in dark of night past boleys of trees, jet black against dim grayness and crusted snow on ground. Light shows faintly ahead, lantern light through a small oiled paper window. Ah, yes, of course. Just where it has been for 8 months now, the Henderson place. Man and woman and small girl and waist-high boy. Homesteaders, not even fools, homesteaders, worse than that, out of their minds altogether, all of them. Out here anyway, betting the government they can stave off starving for 5 years in exchange for 160 acres of land that just might be able to support 7 jackrabbits, 2 coyotes, 9 rattlesnakes, and maybe all of 4 thin steers to a whole section, in a good year. Homesteaders, always out almost everything. Money and food, tools and smiles and joy of living. Everything, except maybe hope and stubborn endurance. Stubby Pringle nudges the reluctant roan along. In patch light from the window by a tangled pile of dead tree branches, he sees a woman. Her face is gray and pinched and tired. An old stocking cap is pulled down on her head. Ragged man's jacket bumps over long woolsy dress and clogs arms as she tries to swing an axe into a good-sized branch on the ground. Whopping sound, an axe bounces and barely misses an ankle. "Quit that," says Stubby, sharp. He swings Roan in close. He looks down at her. She drops axe and backs away, frightened. She is ready to bolt into 2-room bark slab shack. She looks up. She sees that haphazard, scrambled features under low hat brim are crinkled in what could be a grin. She relaxes some, hand on door latch. "Ma'am," says Stubby, "you trying to cripple yourself?" She stares at him. "Man's work," he says. "Where's your man?" "Inside," she says, then, quick, "He's sick." "Bad?" says Stubby. "Was," she says. "Doctor that was here this morning thinks he'll be all right now, only he's almighty weak, all wobbly. Sleeps most of the time." "Sleeps," says Stubby, indignant. "When there's wood to be chopped?" He's been almighty tired," she says, quick, defensive. "Even afore he was took sick, wore out." She is rubbing cold hands together, trying to warm them. "He tried," she says, proud. "Only a while ago couldn't even get his pants on, just fell flat on the floor." Stubby looks down at her. "And you ain't tired?" he said. "Ain't got time to be tired," she says, not with all I got to do." Stubby Pringle looks off past dark boleys of trees at last low ridge top that hides valley and schoolhouse. "I reckon I could spare a bit of time," he says. "Likely they ain't much more'n started yet," he says. He looks again at the woman. He sees gray pinched face. He sees cold shivering under bumpy jacket. "Ma'am," he says, "get on in there and warm your gizzards some, and I'll just chop you a bit of wood." Roan stands with dropping reins, ground tied, disgusted. It shakes head to send icicles tinkling from bit and bridle. Stopped in midst of epic run, wind-eating, mile-gobbling, iron-boned and dynamite-fueled. And for what? For silly chore of chopping? 15 feet away, Stubby Pringle chops wood. Moon is rising over last low ridge top, and its light, filtered through trees, shines on leaping blade. He is Stubby Pringle, moonstruck maverick of the Triple X, born with axe in hands, with strength of stroke in muscles, weaned on whetstone, fed on cordwood, raised to fell whole force. He is 10 feet tall, and axes enormous in moonlight, and ships fly like storm flakes of snow, and blade slices through branches thick as his arm, through logs thick as his thigh. He leans axe against the stump, and he spreads arms wide, and he scoops up whole cords at a time, and strides to door and kicks it open. Both corners of front room by fireplace are piled full now, floor to ceiling. Good wood, stout wood, seasoned wood, wood enough for a whole wicked winter week. Chore done and done right. Stubby looks around him. Fire is burning bright and well fed, working on warmth. Man lies on big old bed along opposite wall, blanket over, eyes closed, face gray pale, snoring long and slow. Woman fusses with something in old wood stove. Stubby steps to doorway to back room. He pulls aside hanging cloth. Faint in dimness inside, he sees 2 low bunks, and in one, under old quilt, a curly-headed small girl, and in the other, under other old quilt, a boy who would be waist-high, awake and standing. He sees them still and quiet, sleeping sound. Cute little devils, he says. He turns back, and the woman is coming toward him, cup of coffee in hand. Strong and hot and steaming coffee, the kind to warm the throat and gizzard of chore-doing, hard-chopping cowhand on a cold, cold night. He takes the cup and raises it to his lips, drains it in 2 gulps. "Thank you, ma'am," he says. "That was right kindly of you." He sets cup on table. "I gotta be getting along," he says. He starts toward outer door. He stops, hand on door latch. Something is missing in 2-room shack. Trust Stubby Pringle to know what. "Where's your tree?" he says. "Kid's gotta have a Christmas tree." He sees the woman sink down on chair. He hears a sigh come from her. "I ain't had time to cut one," she says. "I reckon not," says Stubby. "Man's job anyway," he says. "I'll get it for you. It won't take a minute. Then I gotta be going." He strides out. He scoops up axe and strides off, upslope some, where small pines climb. He stretches tall and his legs lengthen, and he towers huge among trees, swinging with 10-foot steps. He is Stubby Pringle, born an expert on Christmas trees, nursed on pine needles, weaned on pine cones, raised with an eye for size and shape and symmetry. There, a beauty, perfect, grown for this and for nothing else. Axe blade slices keen and swift. Tree topples. He strides back with tree on shoulder. He rips leather whangs from his saddle and lashes 2 pieces of wood to tree bottom, crosswise so tree can stand upright again. Stubby Pringle strides into shack carrying tree. He sets it up, center of front room floor, and it stands straight, trim and straight, perky and proud and pointed. "There you are, ma'am," he says. "Get your things out and start decorating. I gotta be going." He moves toward outer door. He stops in outer doorway. He hears the sigh behind him. "We got no things," she says. "I was figuring to buy some, but sickness took the money." Stubby Pringle looks off at last low ridge top, hiding valley and schoolhouse. "Reckon I still got a bit of time," he says. "They'll be hooping it up mighty late." He turns back, closing door. He sheds hat and gloves and bandanas and jacket. He moves about, checking everything in the sparse front room. He asks for things, and the woman jumps to get those few of them that she has. He tells her what to do, and she does. He does plenty himself. With this and with that, magic wonders arrive. He is Stubby Pringle, born to poverty and hard work, weaned on nothing, fed on less, raised to make do with least possible and make the most of that. Pinto beans strung on thread brighten tree and firelight and lantern light like strings of store-bought beads. Strips of one bandana cut with shears from sewing box bob in bows on branch ends like gay red flowers. Snippets of fleece from jacket lining sprinkled over tree glisten like fresh fall of snow. Miracles flow from strong, blunt fingers through bits of old paper bags and dabs of flour paste into linked chains and twisted small streamers and 2 jaunty little hats and 2 smart little boats with sails. "Gotta finish it right," says Stubby. From strong, blunt fingers comes 5-pointed star, triple thickness to make it stiff, twisted bit of old wire to hold it upright. He fastens this to topmost tip of topmost bough. He wraps lone bandana left around throat and jams battered hat on head and shrugs into now skimpy-lined jacket. "A right nice little tree," he says. "All you got to do now is get out what you got for the kids and put it under. Well, I really got to be going." He starts toward outer door. He stops in open doorway. He hears the sigh behind him. He knows without looking around the woman has slumped into old rocking chair. "We ain't got anything for them," she says, "only now this tree, which I don't mean it isn't a fine, grand tree. It's more'n we'd had, so for you." Stubby Pringle stands in open doorway looking out into cold, clean, moonlit night. Somehow he knows without turning head. 2 tears are sliding down thin, pinched cheeks. "You go on along now," she says. "They're good young'uns. They know how it is. They ain't expecting a thing." Stubby Pringle stands in open doorway looking out at last ridge top that hides valley and schoolhouse. "All the more reason," he says, soft to himself. "All the more reason something should be there when they wake." He sighs too. "I'm a dong-bong and ding-busted dang-blatted fool," he says. "But I reckon I still got a mite more time. Likely they'll be sashaying around till it's most morning." Stubby Pringle strides on out, leaving door open. He strides back, closing door with heel behind him. In one hand he has burlap bag wrapped around paper parcel. In other hand he has squarish chunk of good pine wood. He tosses bag parcel into lap folds of woman's apron. "Unwrap it," he says. "There's the makings for a right cute dress for the girl. Needle and threader like you can whip it up in no time. I'll just whittle me out a little something for the boy." Moon is high and cold, cold sky. Frosty clouds drift up there with it. Tiny flakes of snow float through upper air. Down below by a 2-room shack droops a disgusted cow-pony roan, ground-tied, drooping like statue snow-crusted. It is accepting the inescapable destiny of its kind, which is to wait for its rider, to conserve deep-bottom dynamite energy, to be ready to race to the last margin of motion when waiting is done. Inside the shack, fire and fireplace cheerily gobbles wood. Good wood, stout wood, seasoned wood, warming 2 rooms well. Man lies on bed, turned on side, curled up some, snoring slow and steady. Woman sits in rocking chair sewing. Her head nods, slow and drowsy, and her eyelids sag weary, but her fingers fly, stitch, stitch, stitch. A dress has shaped under her hands, small and flounced, and with little puffed sleeves. Fine dress, fancy dress, dress for smiles and joy-a-livin'. She is sewing pink ribbon around collar and down front and into fluffy bow on back. On a stool nearby sits Stubby Pringle, piece of good pine wood in one hand, knife in other hand. Fine knife, splendid knife, all-around accomplished knife he always has with him. 7-bladed knife with 4 for cutting from little to big, and corkscrew and can opener and screwdriver. His cutting blade has done its work. Little cutting blade is now in use. He is Stubby Pringle, born with feel for knives in hand, weaned on emery wheel, fed on shavings, raised to whittle his way through the world. Tiny chips fly and shavings flutter. There in his hands, out of good pine wood, something is shaping. A horse, yes, flop-eared, ewe-necked, cat-hipped horse. Flop-eared head is high on ewe-neck, stretched out, sniffing wind, snorting into distance. Cat hips are haunched forward, caught in crouch for forward leap. It is a horse fit to carry a waist-high boy to uttermost edge of eternity and back. Stubby Pringle carves swift and sure. Little cutting blade makes final little cutting snitches. Yes, tiny mottlings and marking made no mistaking. It is a strawberry roan. He closes knife and puts it in pocket. He looks up. Dress is finished in woman's lap, but woman's head has dropped down in exhaustion. She sits slumped deep in rocking chair, and she too snores slow and steady. Stubby Pringle stands up. He takes dress and puts it under tree. Fine dress, fancy dress, dress waiting now for a small girl to wake and wear it with smiles and joy of living. He sets wooden horse beside it. Fine horse, proud horse, snorting into distant horse. Cat hips crouched, waiting now for waist-high boy to wake and ride it around the world. Quietly he piles wood on fire and banks ashes around to hold it for morning. Quietly he pulls on hat and wraps bandana around and shrugs into skimpy-lined jacket. He looks at old rocking chair and tired woman slumped in it. He strides to outer door and out, leaving door open. He strides back, closing door with heel behind. He carries other burlap bag, a round box of candy of fine chocolates, fancy chocolates, with variegated interiors. Gently he lays this in lap of woman. Gently he takes big old shawl from wall nail and lays this over her. He stands by big old bed and looks down at snoring man. Poor devil, he says. Ain't fair to forget him. He takes knife from pocket, fine knife, 7-bladed knife, and lays this on blanket on bed. He picks up gloves and blows out lantern, and swift as sliding moon shadow he is gone. High, high up frosty clouds scuttle across face of moon. Wind whips through topmost tips of tall pines. What is it that hurtles like hurricane far down there on upslope of last low ridge? Scattering drifts, smashing through brush, snorting defiance at distance. It is flop-eared, ewe-necked, cat-hipped roan, iron-boned and dynamite-fueled, ramming full gallop through the dark of night. Firm in saddle is Stubby Pringle, spurs a jingle, toes a tingle, out on prowl, ready to howl, heading for the dance at the schoolhouse in the valley. He is 10 feet tall, great as a grizzly, and the roan is gigantic, with wings soaring upward in 30-foot leaps. They top out, and roan rears high, pawing stars out of the sky. He drops down, cat hips haunched for fresh leap out and down. Hold it, Stubby. Hold hard on reins. Do you see what is happening on out there in the valley? Tiny lights that are schoolhouse windows are winking out. Tiny dark shapes moving about are horsemen riding off, are wagons pulling away. Moon is dropping down the sky, haloed in frosty mist. Dark gray clouds dip and swoop, a round sweep of horizon. Cold winds weave, rustling through ice-coated bushes and trees. What is that moving slow and lonesome up snow-covered mountainside? It is a flop-eared, ewe-necked, cat-hipped roan, just that, nothing more, small cow pony, worn and weary, taking its rider back to clammy bunk in cold-lined cabin. Slumped in saddle is Stubby Pringle, head down, shoulders sagged. He is just another of far-scattered, poorly paid, patch-clothed cowhands who inhabit these parts. Just that, and something more. He's the biggest thing there is in the whole wide roster of the human race. He is a man who has given of himself, of what little he has and is, to bring smiles and joy of living to others along his way. He jogs along, slump-sagged in saddle, thinking of none of this. He is thinking of dances undanced, of floorboards unstomped, of willing women left unwhirled. He jogs along, half asleep in saddle, and he is thinking now of bygone Christmas seasons and of a boy born to poverty and hard work and make do, pouring and flicker of firelight over ragged old Christmas picture book. And suddenly he hears something, the tinkle of sleigh bells. Sleigh bells? Yes, I'm telling this straight. He and Roan are weaving through thick, clumped brush. Winds are sighing high overhead and on up the mountainside, and lower down here they are whipping mists of snow flurries all around him. He can see nothing of mystic moving dimness, but he can hear. The tinkle of sleigh bells, faint but clear, ghostly but unmistakable. And suddenly he sees something. Movement off to the left. Swift as wind, glimmers only through brush and mist and whirling snow, but unmistakable again. Antlered heads, high, frosty breath teeming, bodies rushing swift and silent, floating in flash of movement past, seeming to leap in air alone, needing no touch of ground beneath. Reindeer? Yes. Reindeer, strong and silent and fleet, out of some far frozen northland marked on no map. Reindeer swooping down and leaping past and rising again and away, strong and effortless and fleeting. And with them, hard on their heels, almost lost in swirling snow mist of their passing, vague and formless but there, something big and bulky with runners like sleigh and flash of white beard whipping in wind and crack of long whip snapping. Startled Roan has seen something too. It stands rigid, head up, staring left and forward. Stubby Pringle, body a-tingle, stares too. Out of dark of night, mingled with moan of wind, comes a long-drawn chuckle, deep, deep chuckle, jolly and cheery and full of smiles and joy of living, and with it long-drawn words. Well done, partner! Stubby Pringle shakes his head. He brushes an icicle from his nose. And I didn't have a single drink, he says. Only coffee, can't count that. Reckon I'm getting soft in the head. But he is cowman through and through, cowman through to the marrow. He can't ride on without stopping to check anything strange on his range. He swings down and leads off to left. He fumbles in jacket pocket to find a match. Strikes it. Holds it cupped and bends down. There they are, unmistakable, reindeer tracks. Stubby Pringle stretches up tall. Stubby Pringle swings into saddle. Roan needs no slap of spurs to unleash strength in upward surge. Up, up, up steep mountainside, it knows. There in saddle once more, is Stubby Pringle, moonstruck maverick of the XXX, all-around, hard-proved, hard-honed cowhand, 10 feet tall, needin' horse gigantic, with wings iron-boned and dynamite-fueled to take him home to little line cabin and some few winks of sleep before another day's hard work. Stubby Pringle slips into cold, clammy bunk. He wriggles vigorous to warm blanket under and blanket over. "Was it worth all that riding?" comes voice of old Jay Candlin from other bunk on other wall. "Why, sure," says Stubby. "I had me a right good time." "All right now, say anything you want. I know, you know, any dong-bong, ding-busted, dang-blatted fool ought to know that icicles breaking off branches can sound to drowsy ears something like sleigh bells. That blurry eyes half asleep can see strange things. That deer and elk make tracks like those of reindeer. That wind sighing and sawing and moaning and maundering down mountains and through piney treetops can sound like someone shaking words. But we could talk and talk, and it would mean nothing to Stubby. Stubby is wiser than we are. He knows, he will always know who it was, plump and jolly and belly bouncing, who spoke to him that night out on wind-whipped, winter-worn mountainside. "Well done, partner,"